Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a note for the agenda on the issues for decision, item 2.1. We put this on a couple of meetings ago, anticipating that we would need an additional authorization for this contract. However, through efforts in engineering, they've been able to negotiate the change order down, so we are within the contingency, and therefore we don't need the resolution, so we'll be taking it off.
Okay.
Good. So next on the agenda would be Resolution 17, FY 2022. And this is related to creating limited term appointment engineering positions to assist the engineering department, specifically for U.S. EPA grant-funded projects. As you know, with the passing of the bipartisan infrastructure law, we anticipate an increase in federal funding for infrastructure projects. We would like to create 4 limited term appointment positions for engineers with a potential 5-year term, initial 5-year term, and a potential to extend 2 years to coincide with the timeline that the EPA gives us to expend the grant funds. Okay. So we anticipate receiving an extra $26 million a year in grant funding for the next 5 years, and then an additional 2 years after that to expend all of those funds. Okay. So we are also requesting that these LTA positions be excluded from our FTE cap based on our budget requests, approved budget requests, because they will be funded outside of the revenue of the authority, specifically by EPA grants, and the work that they will conduct will be only on EPA grant projects.
Okay. Commissioner Santos.
I got a question about, okay, so you get LTAs.
That's fine.
1099 employees, or they're going to be granted the benefits and programs? What's the plan?
They'll be
Regular employees. So I thought I corrected this. I apologize. The contract, where it says contract term, should be deleted. The word contract should be deleted because they're going to be regular employees, just with a different funding source.
And full benefits, full.
They just won't have the protections classified employees like that.
And the reason for that is?
Because we can only employ them and can establish them in classified service because the limited term of the funding.
Even though you think it's for 5 years?
At some point afterwards, if we intend to permanize the position for whatever reasons, or incorporate additional engineering positions under the FTE cap existing at that time, then we'll have to go through the recruitment process and they'll have to apply. But they will have, as an advantage to them, the experience already in their hands.
In your conversation with Tyrone, the czar of this infrastructure thing, is he planning to have a engineering team? Because right now GWA basically is nothing as far as engineering is concerned with respect to GWA. Right? They're very weak with that, so I've never heard any.
We have not had any. I have not had any discussions with Mr. Taitano with respect to how he intends to execute any CIP projects that will result from the additional infrastructure funding.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how if this same thing will apply to John B. on his side, because the infrastructure plan is broad, right? Broad in scope.
I really don't know. I haven't. We'll find out on Thursday.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So specific to us, this is allowable under the grants, and it's been coordinated with U.S. EPA, Tom Connors.
So on your side?
On our side. So I guess I would say with respect to how it might be done elsewhere, it would it would depend on the conditions of the grant and whether or not it's allowable under the programs.
Okay. When is your next meeting with the governor?
Early June.
Maybe you would want to ask her how she envisions this to happen.
Okay, I can note that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
So,
any other questions?
Sorry, sir,
Okay.
just to round out, the estimated cost for this would be, for the 5 years, to be $2.124 million, And then if we extend to elect for the additional 2 years, it would be an additional $849,000. So total combined cost of about $2.974 million, all funded through EPA grants over the 5-year period.
Are we allowed to charge an admin cost for this, Don? Just say yes.
I believe.
So I did.
Just say yes, Don.
I
Thank you.
did ask about it,
Yeah.
and you know, Tom's response was that he's already allowing us to hire the staff, and so he was reluctant to. He said we could apply, but he was reluctant to come in.
He wants to save
Okay.
the majority of the funding for project
Right.
expenditures.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions? Any other questions? Okay. Next.
Sorry, next,
No problem.
Mr. Chair, is Resolution 18 FY
22.
2022, and this is seeking an increase to the authorized amount for our liquid chlorine supply contract. And this is for all of our water production and treatment facilities island-wide. As you may recall, we previously issued a procurement with a 5-year, multi-year supply contract for liquid chlorine to meet our obligations under the Safe Drinking Water Act and the requirements under the court order. We are on the 3rd year of our initial 3-year term, and in looking at our expenditures, we're finding that we likely will exceed the authorized contract amount for the first 3-year term. And so we are seeking additional funding for year 3 of $135,000, and then based on the projections of our use for the additional 2 years and taking into account the costs, the current costing, we are looking at an additional 2 years at an amount of $1.77 million. So we're seeking a total funding authorization of $4.908 million to take us through September 2024, and these will be O&M funded. So these are regular operational expenses.
Is this part of the 4.9 is the total cost including the original funding?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
That was my only question, Mr. Chair. Just the reconciling at the 4.9.
Okay. Next.
Commissioners, for your consideration is Resolution Number 19 FY 2022, which is relative to increasing transfers from the GWA Rate Stabilization Fund into the GWA General Fund. As you might recall, Resolution 06 FY 22 authorized the transfer of up to $2 million from the Rate Stabilization Fund. To date, we have transferred about $400,000 a month. The total transfers to date are $1.6 million. Due to the uncertainty of the PUC action on our updated financial plan, we're asking that for an additional authorization to transfer up to $3.3 million out of the Rate Stabilization Fund, which would bring the total authorized transfers up to 5.3. As you might recall, the transfers of the Rate Stabilization Fund into the general fund allows us to keep the debt service ratio above the minimum required.
I think I'd also add that the total amount that we're requesting aligns with what we've submitted in our plan to the PUC. So up to fiscal year 22, I think we were looking at 5.3 total anyway. So we're asking for authorization just to meet what we've already
Stick
said
to
we
your
were
plan.
going to do. Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
What is the balance of the rate stabilization fund as is, as of now?
I believe it was originally
11.2, I think, was the original number.
11.4.
And so we've taken
We've taken out 2,
1.2.
and now we're asking for an additional 3.3.
3.3? Okay.
And through the end of the fiscal year, what are we looking?
So we've been taking about $400,000 a month.
That's
Yeah.
the point. Okay.
But we are still constraining our
Spending.
operational expenses, right?
Okay.
Okay. We need that rate increase. Okay. Next.
Also for your consideration is resolution number 20 FY22, which gives us authorization to establish a bank account
Right.
with First Hawaiian Bank for our merchant banking services. As you might recall, we're changing our vendor from Bank of Hawaii to First Hawaiian, and so we'll need that account so that we can transfer payments from the credit card
To that account.
to that account, and then eventually transfer that over to our general accounts with the bank account.
This is the same thing that we got from GPA, I think. Or, I think GPA is doing
Likely,
this. Yeah,
yes.
it's going to be doing the same thing. Okay. And this keeps us, accepting credit card payments and
Right.
not charging customers for it. Which is, and I think now you also can do commercial customers, right? Or no?
We have a resolution, we have authorization in place to waive any limitations on commercial payments.
Okay.
I just got a
Commercial
question.
side.
I'm looking at your
Santos.
authorized signatories. What is your control telling on the amounts greater than 10,000? For example, you and, well, the way I would do is only Miguel can sign anything over 10,000 and all the other signatures, because I need a neck to grab if something goes
Right.
wrong.
We have a daily transfer document that's prepared, and depending on the amount of the transfers will determine who signs them. So Miguel sees them whenever they go over the,
Over the 10?
Yeah.
But what's the current, understand, what did you guys establish as the way someone signs checks here?
so this is for fund transfers.
No. Just generally, you have a $2 million check, who signs?
It would
Miguel
be
and-
me and Miguel.
Okay.
So there's 2 signatures required.
Yeah, it says that, but I was just curious if Miguel is the signature that needs to be on that check.
If it's over.
There's a threshold above which I am a required signatory, and then underneath, below that, if
Is
it's
any
still
one of the 5?
above 10, but below that threshold, then tolling is the control.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Last resolution, Mr. Chair, is 21 FY 2020. This should be 2022. Yeah? It should be FY 2022 on the, sorry, we didn't catch that. This is relative to amending a conservation and construction easement which was issued for property that GWA is under GWA control above SETI Bay, lot 275 in the Agate Umatic area. And essentially, an initial conservation and construction easement was provided to the Navy for the purposes of completing a environmental mitigation project that resulted from their disturbance of the marine environment when they did the Kilo Wharf upgrades. So there was an agreement between the Navy and the government of Guam that a mitigation project would be conducted to improve water quality in other areas outside of the wharf. And that area happened to be the SETI Bay area, so they initially did some reforestation or coastal rehabilitation in that area. And in order to maintain it and meet the requirements of their construction permits and environmental permits, they need continued access to make sure that what they did takes hold and is maintained. And so it has taken longer than they initially anticipated, and so they're requesting an extension to the term of the construction and
easement.
conservation easement, and we are simply seeking the board's authorization to effectuate that extension.
Sure. Okay.
There's no cost, and this will take it out to 2026.
When is their estimated completion date?
2026?
2026?
Yes.
Okay.
If it is not adversely impacting GW's use of the property, so we're in agreement.
So the main timeframe is just to monitor?
I think monitor and maintain. With the reforestation, I think they might have to go in and if something doesn't take, replant it.
Okay. Good. Anything else? Now we can go to your stuff.
No other issues, we can move on to the management report.
Sure.
Good morning, Commissioners. First report is the workforce availability. As of May 13th, 2022, we are at 98.1%. Reporting is healthy. The remaining were either sick, not related to COVID-19, or on long-term disability. And the vaccination status, 94% fully vaccinated with 6% not vaccinated.
Okay. Moving on to the operations update for production for the month of April. We had a total production averaging 38.7 million gallons a day, 35.4 of that coming from our deep wells, with a total of 95 wells on average active during the month. You will note on the table on the right, we have in the second row grounded motors, 13 wells with grounded motors, and at the bottom, standby, only one well on standby. So we are struggling through some issues with keeping the wells running. We'll likely need to increase our inventory of replacement pumps and motors because of these issues. So you might be seeing something in the future if we require additional funding authorization. The Springs, Santa Rita Springs average production was 0.22 million gallons a day. Ugam is keeping steady at 2 million gallons a day. And Tumon Maui well at about 1 million gallons a day. The next slide shows just the Tumon Maui well production. We had one dip in production early in the month. That was just a reset issue, so no major issues there. In fact, we had a inspection, I think in April by the Navy with no major issues identified. For distribution, for the month of April, we maintain pump station operability at 91.1%, holding steady pretty much throughout the northern, central, and southern pump stations. So no changes from the prior month's reporting. However, distribution levels on the next page, you will see a slight decline over the month. This is kind of continuing into May because of the issues we're facing with production wells. So we're working towards trying to alleviate that and get our production back up and our reservoir levels closer to the 50% level and move away from the 30% level on average. In terms of wastewater collections for April, pump station operability down a bit to 85.1%. Again, we suffer the same types of issues with pumps on the wastewater side. However, we're managing without too much issue. On cleaning and CCTV inspections, mostly cleaning, for the month of April, we exceeded the target of 5 miles for the month. So I think we're tracking well for the year. However, I have had a conversation with the AGM for operations to move into, in anticipation of the consent decree requirements, moving into kicking our CCTV operations back into gear and getting more of that done, because we're going to have some limits that we need to meet for the consent decree. Moving on to wastewater treatment, our average flows for the two largest plants, Hagåtña and Northern, hovered around 4.2, 4.3 million gallons a day, which is typical for this time of year. Agate at around 1 million gallons a day. Total sludge produced from all three of those plants down a little bit, 290,000 pounds, and our sludge disposal costs are about 64,000 for the month, down from our typical numbers. And as we move Northern District into full secondary, we expect that their sludge output will be reduced moving forward.
You know, Miguel, just remind me, agate, because the two big plants, their maximum capacity is what, 6 million? Or?
So I think the way we had it set up under the interim targets for under the court order, it was around 6 MGD.
For each?
But with the upgrades, that will, like, that, I think that those numbers increase for
For northern.
daily average for northern.
Okay, Agana, that's just...
Still where it is until we do upgrades there.
Yeah. But what is agate? What's your max?
I think we're, I want to say about 1.6 for agate on average, but peak of up to 3 point something. And
Okay.
you can see during the wet season, we do get inflows that high,
Yeah.
which is why we have the equalization.
The design
tank.
of the tanks.
Yes, so we
Okay.
have about 2 million gallons in storage at the equalization tank, so that when we do have those big events, it's taken up in the storage,
And then
and then
processed.
it's slowly fed into the
To-
plant, so we don't upset the process flows in the plant.
Okay. Out of curiosity, do you have room at the agate plant for expansion?
We do
For another clarifier or what?
We do have room for another ditch, I believe, and another clarifier.
Okay.
And the connections have already been built in, so if we ever decide to expand, it's just the structure, and then they're easily connected to the existing process.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking is because we did mention with the military, I think you mentioned that, to invite them that maybe if they wanted to convert their existing wastewater treatment plant down at the Naval Station into a pump station, pump it over to us, and we could process that. So that's why I was wondering. So we do have that ability.
We do have that, and we're currently in discussions about that potential.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Spread the cost.
Moving on to asset management.
Get some revenue.
Our equipment preventive maintenance to corrective maintenance ratio is at 30% corrective, 70% preventive. In terms of completion of those percentages, for the preventive maintenance, we're tracking 86% complete on all work orders, and for the corrective maintenance, 94% complete on all work orders. In terms of corrective maintenance between leak repairs and equipment repairs, the ratio is 54% for leaks and 46% for equipment corrective maintenance work orders. And for completion of those work orders, we're tracking at 96% complete for leaks and 94% complete for equipment corrective maintenance. Moving on to the One Guam update, as I mentioned, we did have an inspection on April 20th with no issues. There was a visit by the Admiral to see the condition of the Tuma Maui well on April 18th. He was very pleased with his visit. No concerns expressed or raised through the One Guam process for that. We do have a request in to increase the production rates at Tuma Maui well, but we have not yet received approval of that. We had an initial meeting, myself, the CFO, and others, with respect to establishing an updated service agreement with the Navy. This is going to be a long-term effort to negotiate a contract which captures the exchange of business between the Navy, the DoD, and GWA for water and wastewater services. One of the requirements in the PUC rate order from 2020 was that we work through a water exchange. That was raised at this meeting, and it has already been kind of agreed to in principle at the One Guam level. So we are going to make sure throughout this process that we incorporate that objective into the final service agreement between the two parties. So work on that will continue, and then we will provide occasional updates as we make progress. For One Guam assistance with the OEA projects, we are continuing to drill the new wells that are located mostly on DoD property. I think we've completed the Marble well, and we've moved on to drilling Jigo. As of yesterday, we were about at 375 feet, which is probably 100 to 150 feet short of the final completion depth. So they're working on trying to complete that. We anticipate that will be drilled out probably in the next couple of days. Then there'll be some logging that is required by WERI and USGS, video logging of the open hole, and then we'll go back and fill it, complete it, and then move to the final 2 or 3 wells that remain. So we've got, I think, 3 under our belt, working through the 4th one, and then we've got 3 remaining after that.
Okay.
The efforts to connect Camp Blas, we've provided everything we need to provide in order for them to connect. They're still working on applying for the meter to count. And there are several property transfers that continue to be kind of stalled in the Navy and GovGuam process. I think the Navy laterals up in Nimitz Hill, that's stalled on the Navy side, and then the transfer of the Tumon Maui well that's in Tamuni, the ASORP well, that one is stalled on the GovGuam side. Unfortunately, we're out of the picture on both of those transfers, and we just have to wait to see what happens. And so we're waiting for that. The only other items under One Guam, we took care of the Seti Bay easement with this explained in this resolution that we presented this morning.
Okay.
And then we do have a pressure zone realignment project. There was a vault that needed to be installed, and we requested it be installed near the GPA substation, which is on Navy property. So we've gotten approval for that. So we're working on that. And then near the old Marble Annie South area, we have an easement issue that we're trying to work out with DOD, and that has been still in the works. I think we're waiting for an approval letter, and essentially that rounds out the One Guam issues. Moving on to the next slide on court order summary, no change, of course, 97.8% complete with respect to performance, and we're just waiting on that one remaining item on the reservoirs, which we anticipate being completed in 2023. We did have some SSOs during the month of April. The ones that were reported to EPA are listed. There's about 4, mostly in Santa Rita, and 1 in Mongmong and 1 in Tamuning. With the causes listed there, we had some blockage and then some pump issues, 2 related to the contractor at one of our projects. In terms of land acquisition issues, no new updates to report, except that we've received an appraisal for one of the private property pump stations we're trying to acquire for a pump station in the south. In terms of leak repair and reporting, we're keeping our backlog of leak repair work orders down below 20 as of the end of April, so we're making good progress there. And there has been, in the past week, I think we've shared with some of the board members who were able to make the presentation, the water loss control efforts in the district meter area implementation is ongoing. We're showing better progress than we expected for the first year of the 3-year implementation program, and in establishing the DMAs, and we still have a lot of groundwork to do in the field with leak detection and leak repair in order to take advantage of that progress that we've been making. So we are making progress. The results will be take some time to show up in our numbers, but we are making progress. Chris, did you want to go over the accounts receivable?
Real quick, Miguel, the 8-inch break-in on the Pago Bay Bridge update.
So that has been, the immediate work has been completed to isolate the line. We are working on getting an assessment done for all of our bridge crossings. And for this one in particular, we're tracking efforts on 2 fronts. One, to retract the line that was under the bridge that remains in the river, getting that removed, and then a design to replace that line. Mm-hmm. In terms of operations, with the valves that we were able to install, we have isolated the break. We have the means in place to provide a temporary connection on the surface of the bridge. We've coordinated that with DPW, and they've provided approval of that already. As of this point, there were 2 lines running under the bridge, so all the flows have been shifted to the 16-inch line that is still active. And so operationally, we're we are still able to provide sufficient water. We're tracking and monitoring that. If there is a need to put in that temporary line, we will do so. At this point, the permanent repairs will take some engineering effort, and so we have the scope of that work being developed so that we can get an engineering procurement done. We have not yet determined whether we're going to use an existing IDIQ contract or if we're going to put out a separate design contract to cover this bridge crossing and island-wide all of our bridge crossings, because it's kind of a separate, right? Specific effort. So we're working on that, and we'll provide updates as we move forward.
Okay. You know, that's the problem with our system. We almost have to redo the whole system. And, you know, that's a many-year project, multi-year project, and a lot of money. A lot of money, so.
When I first came on board, we had a discussion about the bridge crossings with some of the ops folks, and the issue of maintaining lines that run under bridge crossings. You know, the issue was it's kind of requires specialized equipment. It's not something that our crews can do using the equipment in our inventory. So we're now revisiting what type of special equipment we might need for the ongoing maintenance of those types of crossings, including, I don't know if it makes sense for us to do some sort of work boat or work barge that can be deployed on smaller river crossings. But it's kind of specialized and the conditions are varied.
Yeah.
Some bridge crossings, there's barely a creek, and some, you know, there's sufficient water underneath to support some sort of work boat or work platform. But
I don't know. I think you need to give thought to the fact that, and I'm not an engineer, you are, but I've seen it where the piping goes on the side of a bridge with its own platform or whatever, and makes it easier for your people to get to it. And I think you need to review, and I would recommend we standardize all these things so that in the future, anytime they're redoing a bridge, you know, it's only one way. I wouldn't recommend getting specialized equipment.
so that's part of the exact reason why we're considering in the engineering procurement whether it should be part of an existing IDIQ or a separate specialized contract just for that type of assessment and design. Because that's not it's not something that's included in our day-to-day pipe replacement design.
Yeah,
Right? So
no.
we're considering that.
They're primarily south, right?
No.
Yeah.
The bridges?
The bridges,
Bridges,
yeah.
central and
But-
south.
No, I know, but I remember when they,
Agana's the other one.
yeah, the
There's
Ganya one's
several
the
in
big one.
Agana. The one by Fonte by Pico.
Yeah,
Right,
One
and then
there.
there's, what about
Route 4.
the tennis court one? The one along that, is there one there too?
I think so.
Right by the mayor's office?
I mean,
Yeah.
so I'm just thinking, I mean,
So
unfortunately, you have
53.
to talk to Tyrone, but.
There's 53 total.
53?
53 bridges total. I'm not sure that we have lines crossing all 53. And even if we did, some of the lines would be smaller, obviously,
Yeah.
in the south,
Yeah.
where there
The
isn't
south.
as much demand. But DPW recently, as I understand it, completed assessments of all of their bridge crossings. Yesterday, I met with DPW director, and he graciously agreed to provide us as much information as soon as possible on all of those assessments, because we anticipate that they might include any infrastructure hanging under the bridge, and so we can take a look at that and use that to accelerate our efforts and to prioritize where we
Yeah.
need maintenance conducted.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, if they're going to redo these bridges, because they redid the one in Agana, you know, when the military was redoing the one in Agana. So they have that on the side of the bridge.
Yeah.
And, you know, to me, we should standardize these things so that as Public Works goes forward and redoes the bridge, that should be part of the plan in there somehow, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
we should be involved in it, but, you know,
Yeah, and we've got a good working relationship with DPW on this, and so, and we, as I said, meet frequently, so we're meeting monthly on this, so this issue will stay on the radar.
Yeah, because, I tell you, that break-ins, was painful for a lot of people.
Yes, sir. Understand.
But, that's the way, there wasn't not a lot of planning in the decades that preceded us coming on board, This is one of the things that we're trying to correct, that people don't understand, and again, I always tell people, these things cost a lot of money. I envision GWA's you're gonna have more money invested in your infrastructure than GPA is. Anyway, okay.
I think, just a segue, because we talked about bridges, we need to talk to John B. about the, Commissioner, on top of work, the transport of I know something's gonna be moved along Marine Drive.
Oh, for the-
That bridge was an issue.
That was discussed in yesterday's meeting with DPW as well, and I did have a conversation with John about it. He's working on setting up a meeting. Based on my conversation with him yesterday, the transport plans are being drafted. They're close to final. Once he has it in sufficient shape for
DPW.
joint review, he's gonna set that up, and we'll all be participating.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Not on the GM side, but I think there's financial report.
Darlene, you have some words for us?
Sorry, Chris, did you go through the? No, you didn't, sorry.
No.
Just the accounts receivable.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Active residential customer accounts receivable due greater than 60 days for customers not on a payment plan. The numbers are holding steady. Actually, for the number of customer accounts and the amounts are trending below pre-pandemic levels. So we're in good shape on the residential side. Same thing on the commercial side. Holding steady as well, with about 60 accounts and around $60,000. So starting the disconnections really helped a lot with getting that back in line.
And I had a leak in my pool, so I used a lot more water than I would have liked to. And I did get that red notice on the bottom of my bill that says, you better look at something.
Continuous.
So you are giving people notice. It's up to the people to decide what they're going to do. I shut the pool off for a little while. Jeez. Okay.
Next slide.
Sorry, before we start, just
Sure.
one more thing to mention, the AGM officer reminded me that with respect to the outage and the Pago Bay, the bridge incident, we were able to install valves to isolate, and we had our valve maintenance crews out in the field trying to isolate existing valves, but we're finding that where we have focused on valve maintenance, we now probably will need to turn to valve replacement in a lot of areas. So that's something else that we're going to be having to implement.
You're going to redo the whole island.
And that's due to corrosion? Or
Just age
to
and
age?
there isn't. Ideally, you don't want to be moving the valves once it's in the right position and the system is stable. You don't want to be adjusting. You only want to be adjusting them when you have breaks or when you need to isolate. So, in a lot of cases, the valves have never been moved, and then when we go in and we try to operate them, we find that they're frozen in position, or when we try to torque the nut, sometimes we break the valves down. The equipment that we've purchased applies the pressure gradually. It's like a hydraulic system with it measures the torque as you go, and there's a sequence that's set up that ramps it up slowly so that you turn back, turn back, just to exercise the valve to break it free without
Breaking
trauma. And in some cases, the trauma is inevitable. And then in those cases, now we have a valve that was frozen in place. Now as we've broken the stem, now we got to and fix it. Normal part of operations for infrastructure that doesn't really get touched for decades. Okay, sorry.
Okay, now.
Much more interesting.
Much more interesting.
So the first slide is a snapshot of our financial indicators for the month. Our debt service coverage is at 1.25, and our cash on hand is at 269 days, slight reduction from the prior month. Our year-to-date collection ratio is at 97%. We continue to get regular payments from DOA for the homeowner and the renter assistance programs funded with pandemic funding. Our days billed were at 30 days. Our accounts receivable days improved by 1 day, and we were able to pay our vendors 4 days faster than the previous month. We're holding our FTEs at 362, and our demand for April was slightly below that of March. Our water and wastewater customers are about the same. The next month, this is just a picture for the year of our revenues and expenditures and related net operating income. So April's operating revenues were below the prior month, and our operating expenses slightly higher. The next slide is a picture of the contributions to our revenues from the different rate classes. This compares FY22 year-to-date to FY21. We're seeing a reduction in residential, the contributions by our residential customer class, and that's being made up by additional revenues from our commercial and government GWA classes. The next page is a similar, looks very similar to the revenue. This is our demand, with again our reduction in residential demand being made up by increases in our commercial and government. The next page is our shows the contributions to our wastewater revenue by the different rate classes, because our residential revenues are billed on a flat rate. That's why you see a smaller contribution by our residential class. But if you take a look at the next slide, showing wastewater flows, this mirrors more the demand of our water. The next page is our percentage of expenditures by categories. Pretty much looks the same from year to year. Although what's been happening is we're seeing a greater contribution, we're seeing a greater percentage of our expenditures from our utilities, especially power, which moved from 14% to 18% between 21 and 22, and a reduction in our net salaries and benefits from 27% to 24%. The next page is a picture of our revenues compared to our demand. The blue is water, and the red is wastewater, and the green line is our revenues. And then the next slide just shows that breakout between water and wastewater. And then following that is a picture of our revenues and collections, showing our month to date and our year to date collection ratios. And then the next slide is a different picture, a little different from what Chris showed you. On the left, the AR balance includes our inactive accounts, and then when you take them out, that's the charts on the right side. And then the last page is just a reminder of our debt service going out. Okay. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, it's just that debt service keeps going up. This is just on current debt. This is not,
Right.
if you acquire more debt, this is going to change again, right?
Yeah, and depending on the market, there might be some opportunities to do some refunding.
Oh, to refund
That
some
might be
bonds?
able to reduce some of the near-term.
So debt service right now is about 39 million a year? You're almost up to the 40
gonna jump.
million mark, and you're gonna cross it eventually.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
is there anything else? No? You know,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Just under other discussion, we did receive feedback from the ALJ on the rate case
Okay,
at the end of last week. We are pouring through his conclusions and recommendations. We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with the financial advisor to go over the potential response. A response, if GWA intends to submit one, is due on the 27th. We will make sure to meet that deadline. And we will share with you our draft, I guess,
Where we're
initial
at.
draft outline of what our response will be,
Okay.
along with the ALJ's document, as soon as we complete the meeting tomorrow. So I anticipate by tomorrow afternoon, we will send out an email with
do you
this
anticipate
information.
a time frame when this will get to the PUC?
Based
Yeah.
on, Teresa, you want to answer that one?
I spoke with the ALJ and he's anticipating sending out a notice for a special meeting, maybe the first week of June.
Okay.
So either that June 1st Wednesday through June 3rd Friday, or the following week, June 6th.
Okay.
And so, but I understand he is getting confirmation from the commissioners, and once they're able to set
Their
their
availability, yeah,
their
okay.
availability, they'll send out the agenda. So they're looking to set it as soon as possible. Really, yeah.
Okay. Okay, just a couple of things that I'd like to bring up with the commission and you, is basically, I think it would be good if we got and we should do this with both GPA and GWA, an update on your strategic plan of where we're at. I think you're getting ready to update the master plan. If I remember correctly, the way we were proceeding was we updated the master plan in 2018, and then with a review every 5 years to update it. So we're getting close to the 5 years if we're not there yet.
That work is underway right now.
Okay, so good. So that's something that we'll be seeing in the future.
Yes, sir.
Along with that, I would also like to encourage you, to bring this up in the future. I'd like an update on our wage study. One of the things we see happening is the government of Guam, for example, the rest of the government is proposing to increase salaries for teachers, and it's a big number, 20%. But that's because they don't increase salaries at all. And, we've been trying to move on this thing of moving to the 50th percentile. But I think we need to update what the 50th percentile is. So I would, and I'm going to tell this, we should bring this up at this GPA work session also. I think the thought should be, when they do the national percentile, is there a way to involve like the local wages? Because what I've heard you say in the past is that we've lost some of our talent to military contractors. They offer a little bit more. So I heard you say that once or twice in the meetings in
Yes,
the
sir.
past. So,
I guess my understanding is that we would update the compensation data, but try to include as much as possible local market conditions, which may influence
some of that
the
data.
proposed compensation, correct?
Yeah, good.
Okay, I think we can work on that, Chris.
Yeah. Commissioners, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, but I think the normal course of a wage study survey does do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
I don't think it segregates
Yeah,
local.
I wasn't sure. It's just that, we've lost some talent.
Yeah.
And if there's an impact from what's going on in the rest of the market, we need to recognize that. And the whole point is, first off, what I believe we were doing is increasing our wages gradually, 2, 3%, which is the way you should do it, I believe, rather than wait 5 years and then say 20% increase. I think that's not a good way to do it.
Miguel, didn't the two utilities put out a joint procurement for the wage survey already? No.
No, they did? Okay.
Yeah. And so when is that? Is that in the process of the period
The
of
evaluation
performance?
already took place,
Yep.
so the
Oh,
award
okay.
should
I'm
be
sorry.
happening shortly. And we are at the end of the 5 years, so we will be doing an updated study. So we plan them every 5 years, and I think we're
Yeah.
right at the 5-year mark.
Okay. You guys are ahead of me, see? That's great. I like that. I'll bring it up at GPA anyway, just to make sure we're all on the same page. No, you know, I mean, I go back to that thing that, you know, I like to, what people say in the past sometimes is relevant. Eisenhower, great general, great president, said, plans mean nothing. The planning process is what means everything. You're constantly planning, you know? You don't stop. You don't do a plan and put it on the shelf. Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else, commissioners?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Second? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.